The cross means the question of your worth, the question of your value, the question of your worth has been taken out of your hands and decided in your favor. We live in a world that is becoming increasingly post-Christian in America and in the West. And let me tell you what everybody knows. Everybody just assumes tribalism and racism is wrong. I'm glad they assume that. Do you know that for thousands of years, nobody thought that? Of course you would think the people who are like you are better than other people. The word kindness, for Pete's sake, the word kindness comes from the word kin. And that you're supposed to care about the people that are related to you or like you. And Jesus at the foot of the cross, Gospel John wants you to know, at the cross, Jesus is giving us a whole different kind of community because God really does love the world. One of the things I love about this church, for decades, y'all have valued being a multi-ethnic community because you get the heart of the gospel. You get how important this is. You get this is what God is like. That God really does love the whole world, not just my slice of it. At the cross, Jesus is giving a new humanity. That's what the early Christians were known as. The Gentiles and the Romans, they couldn't categorize them. Bunch of Jews, bunch of Gentiles, rich, poor, women, men. So they started calling them a third race. That's what Jesus is referring to here. You have to be born again into a new kind of family, into a new kind of kingdom. Do you know that in the Bible, sin is not so much about breaking rules as it is about breaking relationship? And that's how Jesus is talking about it here, which means he's telling Nicodemus, you want the kingdom of God, Nick. You can't enter it. In fact, you can't even see it because good people don't go to heaven. Do you know that? I have never met someone in my life who considers themselves not a good person. So this might be offensive. Good people don't go to heaven. Children of God do. Jesus is incredibly inclusive. Anyone can be a part of this, no matter your background, no matter who you are, where you're from, what you know, what you don't know. Anyone can be a part of this, and yet he's incredibly exclusive. It requires him and what he did on the cross. And this matters because the default way human beings are born resists this. When Leslie and I were in college, we studied abroad for a semester, and we went to Egypt for a week. And everywhere in Egypt, there are these hieroglyphics of a picture of something like this, scales. It's the mythology of the Egyptian Day of Judgment. That when you die, the big idea is that when you die, all the good things you've done in your life are put on one side, and all the bad things you've done in your life are put on the other. And if the good deeds outweigh the bad deeds, then you go to paradise. And if the bad deeds outweigh the good deeds, you don't. And I think this is the way human beings have thought forever. And basically what we all do, and we all do this, is we come up with some metric that we can rise to most of the time. And we look around to our left and our right, and we see how they're not rising to our very specific metric. And we think, you know what? I'm basically good. And so this is how it works. We're like, you know what? I'm a good person. Like, I don't smoke. I don't drink, well, much. I don't, I go to church. I volunteer. I sometimes even give. And then we look at the other stuff and we're like, look, I do have other stuff. You're right. But look, when you look around at other people, my stuff is itty bitty. I get on that website from time to time, but who is that hurting? I have an anger problem, but come on, I have good reasons to be angry. And sometimes it has cost me some relationships, and people have used words like toxic, but yeah, it's itty bitty in comparison to other people. Or, yeah, I'm greedy. And this is how we think through. But if you just look at all this other stuff, so much outweighs this. And this is how we think about life. Since the dawn of time, we've tried to approach God this way. We've tried to think about our own self this way. And this is, even though Nicodemus might not know it, the question he's actually asking, because this is exhausting. The question he's actually asking Jesus is some version of like, how good is good enough? How much needs to go on this side to outweigh the stuff that's on this side? And Jesus, notice, Jesus doesn't even play by this system. He doesn't say, Nicodemus, you need to go and have this experience. Instead, the only thing he says is believe in me, lift it up. Because if you want to know what God is like, he is the king of the kingdom of God. And in Jesus Christ, God has chosen you. And until you realize that, you will be a slave in your father's house trying to earn a birthright when everything he always had has always been yours. It is not about something Nicodemus is not doing. Can you see that? He's been doing everything. He is, this wonderfully moral person. It's that he cannot recognize the God who is giving him breath when he's standing right in front of him. Jesus is saying to Nicodemus, I have a different agenda than you. I am not trying to make an unethical person more ethical. I am trying to make a dead person alive. There's another Pharisee in the New Testament that meets Jesus. His name is Paul, and he was very moral. Yeah, his morality led him to participate in murders, but he had good reason for it. He had good reason for it. And then he meets Jesus and everything gets turned upside down. And when he's describing his life pre-Jesus, Saul actually refers to this. He says, look, I was a Hebrew of Hebrews. I had attained academically. I had achieved racially. I counted, I had everything. I had arrived in every way. And he said, I count it all as skubalon. Let me hear you say skubalon. It's like a PG word that means trash. He's basically saying, my old life doesn't count. My old trophies, I don't care about them. My old accomplishments, they don't count. None of that matters. And by the way, neither do my old sins. Do you know when Adam and Eve, when they first sin, the very first thing they do is they put on fig leaves. And what is this but our attempts at covering ourselves before each other and God? For some of us, our fig leaves are our degrees that we got from the university other people couldn't get into. For some of us, it's our pickup truck or our wardrobe or the relationship that we're in or the one that we just got out of that we're proud of or the gifts we give or the cause we care about. A person who lives like this, and Jesus wants to save you from living like this. A person who lives like this is always self-conscious. You're always thinking about it. There's a misery to it. Standing on my rights. I'm going to stand on my own dignity. Don't people know this side is bigger than this side? There's this always constant self-awareness. And the best Christian thinkers in Christian history have been trying to warn us about this. Tell us, this is not from God. So Dante, in his Paradise, the vision of the afterlife that he wrote so eloquently about, as he goes through the inferno and then ultimately up to the heavens to see God, as he gets closer to the vision of God, he said, I began to stop thinking about myself altogether. He said, anxiety dissolved. My anxiety dissolved as he got close to the love that moves the sun and stars. Jesus is not trying to get you to be better at this system. He is trying to save you from this system because this is really important. This is gospel. This is the word of the Lord for you today. What the cross means, the question of your worth has been taken out of your hands and decided in your favor. This is not new to me, but this is gospel. The question of your value, the question of your worth has been taken out of your hands and decided in your favor. Do you see how different this is? Do not buy the secular world myth that all world religions are basically the same. Other religions, their founder came teaching how to improve yourselves. But you cannot just slowly improve yourself. It's the middle of the year, right? How are those New Year's resolutions going for you? Jesus is not just offering you the gospel power to change. He's trying to also change your change. You cannot be reformed. This doesn't work. But you can be transformed. I heard an analogy that I think makes sense. Imagine a farmer owns an apple orchard, but what he really wants is a pear orchard. So he goes to Walmart. I'm from Arkansas, so that's where we go. He goes to Walmart, and he gets a bunch of pears, and he goes out and staples them on the apple trees. Does that work? No, that doesn't work. And if we approach God with this default human assumption that we need to be, good, and it's not just good, by the way, right? We want to be gooder. We want to be better. This only works by looking at other people's scoreboards. If we approach God like that, we're always self-conscious. And Jesus is saying, that has to die. You must be born again. And by the way, who gets themselves born? I'm looking at people who have mostly been born, right? Did anybody have anything to do with that? No. My wife and I have 5 kids, and that means 5 different times I have been in the room. And by the way, the husband in the delivery room is the lowest form of human life, right? Like you're like, well, I had something to do with this too. Then you're like, okay, I'll just stand over here and take pictures, whatever. But all 5 times, Leslie has gone through incredible pain and agony. And just like that, it's over. And she would do it again in a heartbeat. Jesus, this metaphor of being born again runs throughout the Gospel of John. And right before he dies, Jesus is talking to his disciples, and they're like, Jesus says, I can tell you're wanting to ask me, what did I mean when I said I was going to go away for a while, and then I was going to come back? And they're like, yeah, we would kind of like to know what that means. He's talking about dying. And this is the metaphor he uses to describe what he's about to do. He says, very truly I tell you, you will weep and mourn while the world rejoices. You will grieve, but your grief will turn to joy. A woman giving birth to a child has pain because her time has come, but when the baby is born, she forgets the anguish because of her joy that a child is born into the world. Here's what Jesus is saying to Nicodemus, and if you can hear it today to you, you cannot balance this weight. You never could. That's why you're obsessed with it. That's why you have all these justifications. You cannot balance this weight, but he can. You can't go make yourself born again any more than you could get yourself born the first time. And by the way, how good is good enough is the wrong question, so stop asking it. Because good people don't go to heaven. Children of God do.